In today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 best practices for using topics in Copilot Studio. Let's go. Welcome back to another video from OnlyCopilotFans. I'm your host, Ansari. First, I want to say thank you. The last video that I uploaded, which was a deep dive on the Business Central MCP server and how you can leverage that in Copilot Studio agents, has received the most number of views, watch hours, and likes compared to any other video that we have on our budding YouTube channel. And it's nearly double the subscriber count too. And this video has only been up for a day and a half. So I am thrilled and appreciative that the content that we're creating is meeting the needs of our community and resonating with our community of Copilot and Copilot Studio fans. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please take a second to do so. And please tell your friends who love Copilot Studio, Copilot, and AI about our channel so we can reach more people with the helpful content that we're creating. So let's turn our attention to today's topic, topics. Topics have been a part of Copilot Studio forever, and certainly a part of the Power Virtual Agents, which was the predecessor to Copilot Studio for a very long time as well, if not since the very beginning. In 2025, I find that some people just avoid topics altogether because they think they're an artifact of a bygone era when manual orchestration ruled the day. And then there are people who overuse topics, almost like they were Power Automate agents. And they don't give the AI orchestration and the AI planning ability of Copilot Studio agents a chance to really shine. For example, they will often just build their tools and their connectors right into a topic instead of using them right from inside the agent and letting those descriptions and the dynamically filled inputs do their magic, which can be such a difference maker. So my goal with this video today is to show you 5 scenarios or 5 best practices where topics will really make an impact. And then hopefully you're going to be able to proceed with a little bit of a better idea of when to leverage topics and when to go a different route. Before we jump into our best practices, I want to take a moment of your time and tell you about an exciting learning opportunity that's coming up. In collaboration with Dynamic Communities, the group that brings to you the AI Agent Copilot Summit and the Community Summit North America conference, which just happened back in October, I will be leading an 8-hour zero to hero style Copilot Studio AI agent building journey. And this is entirely online, so you can do this from the comfort of your home or your office, wherever you prefer. It's going to be on December 3rd and December 4th, 4 hours each day. And you will learn all the basic skills, a lot of the essential skills, and some very advanced skills in agent building. You will learn about building autonomous agents using MCP tools, connecting to backend systems to pull data, read data, organize data, and you'll also learn about knowledge sources. You'll learn about tools and topics and a whole slew of things, including how to publish agents. And of course, working with Dataverse too. And while I'll use Dynamics 365 Business Central as my backend of choice for a lot of the examples that will show in my workshop, even if you do not use Business Central, the skills that you will learn and pick up in this bootcamp will apply to whichever backend system you use at your organization. You can see all the information on my screen here. This is my link, the LinkedIn post from Dynamic Communities, and clicking on this link over here will take me to the actual registration page. You can also find the link to register at the bottom of my screen here, so take a look at that. I'll also put a QR code so you can use your mobile device to scan and go to the registration page. So with that, let's return to our video. All right, so let's talk about our 5 best practices for when you should use topics in Copilot Studio agents. Starting with number 1, when AI orchestration just isn't picking the right knowledge or tool. So how many times have you seen with agents that have multiple knowledge sources that it just does not pick answers from the knowledge source or sources that you prefer? As you've probably figured out, there is no way for you to prioritize knowledge sources in Copilot Studio. So what do you do if it's not picking answers from the right knowledge source, or in some cases, just ignoring the knowledge source that you wanted to look at? So I've got an agent set up precisely to go over an example like this and then how you can leverage topics. So in this agent, I've got 4 knowledge sources, 3 that are relevant to the conversation here, and these are all for Dynamics 365 Business Central, a website, a PDF document. This is called Mastering Business Central APIs, but this points to a specific chapter in a book, and then another book called Business Central Field Guide. So if I were to ask my agent a question about how can I create an API page in Business Central, you will find that it's going to look at all of the knowledge sources and it will decide how it makes up the answer. And it might bring the answer from any combination of these knowledge sources or any one of these knowledge sources as it sees fit. As a matter of fact, if 3 or 4 of us were to create an agent, each with the same knowledge sources, you may find that each agent would probably use something a little bit different. So here I see it's got a combination of a web page, and it's used Chapter 13, that's the Business Central API, Mastering APIs document. This is Chapter 13 in here. But interestingly enough, it decided not to use anything from the other book, which is called the Business Central Field Guide. Now, I like that it's taking a lot of information from this, but I only wanted to get information from this book and not really look at anything else. So this is where topics can come into play. I've already built a topic here. I'm going to enable this, and then I'll show you what's going on in here. So this topic's trigger is set to be that the topic is triggered when the user asks about APIs or API pages in Business Central. And then I will use a create generative answers node. And as the input, I will take activity.text. For those of you who don't know, activity text is the variable, a system variable that holds whatever the last prompt or question or message from the user was. So it'll pass that down in, and then it will generate or create a generative answer. But what will it create the generative answer from? What sources of data will it use? So I can click edit here, and what I've done here is I've selected or enabled these select only or search only selected sources, and then I've selected the Mastering BC APIs book, which is that Chapter 13 PDF I was talking about. So if you notice, none of the other choices are selected. So once this agent is told that this is the only source it should look at when it comes to APIs or API pages, and then I ask a question about how can I create an API page in Business Central, you will notice that instead of looking at all the knowledge sources, it is going to jump straight into the topic because the topic is treated as a higher priority. And in the topic, it knows that it should only look at that particular PDF or that particular chapter in the book. And then I get the answer that I'm looking for, coming entirely from this set of knowledge. So this is how you can do that. And this is how you take control of the orchestration without having to disable automatic orchestration or AI orchestration in your Copilot Studio agent. So that was our first best practice. Let's jump into our second best practice. When you need to implement adaptive cards for data input. Now, I've recently done a separate video entirely on using an adaptive card for data input, but I want to showcase here a scenario of where and why you may be interested in doing that. So let's take a look over here. Once again, I've got another agent that's ready and staged for us to work with. And here I've got a tool, and this tool is for creating Business Central customers. So I've got a create a record type of tool, and most applications, if they have a Power Platform connector, will have a create a record type of tool for most backends. And here the inputs I have to fill are basically giving information on where this what the connection to Business Central looks like and what table I need to connect to. And then I can add other inputs. If I don't add any, all of these will be considered optional, and you can populate the ones that are required. So with this information, if I were to say, create a new customer in Business Central, here's what will happen. It will show me a list of all of the fields that it thinks it needs information on to be able to create a customer record. Now, if I'd selected a handful of inputs inside of the tool, it would have only asked me for those. So over here, if I'd come in and I'd said add input and only chosen 2 or 3 of these fields, it would only ask me for those. But this is a lot of information bundled into one, and this creates for less than an ideal experience. So if you wanted to take an adaptive card, which allows you to do a much better way of collecting information, it's a much more better formatted approach, this would require using a topic. You cannot use adaptive cards directly from the tools area. So by the way, let me first disable this particular tool. I don't want this to interfere with my work anymore. So go into topics and you will see I've got a topic called create a customer with adaptive card. Let's take a look at this particular topic and see what's happening. It says this topic is triggered when the user asks to create a customer record. And then we have an adaptive card. And if you haven't created an adaptive card, I'm going to put a link to the YouTube video that I'm talking about, the one that goes over all this in detail so you can watch the process of doing it. And then once the adaptive card has been populated, it will create the record inside of the backend system wherever you need this information to go. It's basically a matter of mapping all the outputs from the adaptive card as inputs on the next connector. So here you can see I've got a list of inputs, and the inputs that I want populated are mapped. So with that information, if I now go in and say create a new customer in Business Central, instead of showing me that prompt like it did last time, this time you'll find that it's going to create the adaptive card or show me the adaptive card, and the user can populate this. This has some other nice elegant features like drop downs that I can have. If you had date fields, you could have date pickers. Time fields could have time pickers. And here, this is a dollar amount where I can type in or use the up down value as I need to or see fit. So this is the second thing that we'd be able to do, or second place where we'd be able to use tools to truly accomplish something that would not be accomplishable without using them. So let's close this window, and this then takes us into our third best practice. Our third best practice is when you need to work with variables, whether it's initializing variables or parsing variables. Now, for those of you who have used Power Automate extensively, you know there's a lot of opportunity in a Power Automate flow to work with variables, from composing, things to concatenating things to put into a variable, to initializing variables, choosing data types, etc., etc. It is a very easy to work platform. If you've worked with Copilot Studio, one of the things you've probably realized is that variables are only available or only usable for certain things, or you can only initialize and set variables, etc., from inside of a topic. So let's take a look at another agent I've got over here for this. And so in this particular agent, what you will see is that I need to be able to use certain variables to hold things that I need in my instructions. In this particular agent, I will be running through multiple steps, and some information I capture from one of the steps, I need it to be held inside of a variable so that I can use that in another step somewhere down the road. And so the only way I'm able to do this is by creating a series of topics, one to initialize certain variables. And so I've got here, this is basically going to be triggered when the user wants to initialize global variables, and I can trigger this topic as a step in a process in my system instructions. And then I use the set variable node, and then I can choose what type of variable to use. But bear in mind that because we are trying to use this variable outside of the topic as well, we're going to have to make this global. If you don't, it's only going to exist inside of the topic and you won't be able to do much with it. And you could set an initial value over here based on the data type that you have. And then I've also got another kind of variable that I'm initializing, and this is a GUID value that's going to be held. So we're kind of just giving some guidance. Here I put in an email address. I didn't have to do an email address. I could have held anything else in here that was a type string. And then later, as I need to, if I want to set global variable values, as a output from a previous step, I could take some of those and I could take that information. I could use a set variable topic that is going to set those values. And once those values have been set, I can now utilize this somewhere else in my agent. So variables can be very difficult to work with otherwise. If you don't have if you don't have topics, you also have another type of node in here that you can use with variable management, which is called parse value. And parse values will allow you to work with or take something that's a variable of a type record or table, and then take certain things from it and then parse that into a string or a different data type. And that could be extremely important, especially if you're going to be using Prompt Builder, because the outputs of Prompt Builder are not in a string or a date format, etc. So if you needed to extract that, you may need to do parse value as well. So that's another place where you can certainly benefit from using topics. So that is our best practice number 3. Let's talk about best practice number 4. When you need to disambiguate intent. Now, Microsoft's already got a very interesting system topic that they've created, although that does not always look like it's fully baked. And you can take a look at over here under system called multiple topics matched. And the idea behind here is when the intent is not clear, and then you can kind of work with, and there's a lot of variable behavior here. But I've got a very specific example that I want to give you something to think about. This particular agent has some knowledge information about Dynamics 365 Business Central, where it will have documentation on, for instance, how to create a customer. And then I also have a tool and a topic on creating a customer. So if a user says, I want to create a customer and does not give a clear prompt, the agent may at times look at the knowledge source and show the user how to create a customer. And at times, it may give the user the ability to create a customer. But what you really want to have happen at this point is for the agent to stop and ask the user, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? Do you want to create a customer record, or do you want instructions on creating a customer record? And for that, I've got another topic that we can use. So let me turn this particular topic on and turn off this other topic from the last example that I had earlier. And let's see what happens here. In Create Customer, you'll see that if the user triggers or user asks about creating a customer, it's going to ask a question. And the question is going to have a multiple choice options entity. And the choices that I've chosen are instructions and create a record. Now, I intentionally do not use very long questions here. And the reason is that depending on the channel you're deploying something to, you'll find that on web apps and websites, you're going to have a sidecar experience, and you don't always have a scroll option, and it doesn't do a good job of rendering long bubbles or options. So that is why what I want to always do is use as few words as possible. And then once they select any one of these, depending on what they choose, I can go down a different path. So if your choice was instructions, I could then have it go specifically look at the Microsoft Learn documentation or all of the documents and give it answers on how to create a customer. If they had chosen the create a record, and in this case, I just said all other conditions as the alternative instead of create a record, then it brings up an adaptive card. In this particular case, this in turn was building up a Power Automate flow, etc., etc. So while I won't go through the entire process, let's see what happens if I say, I'd like to create a customer. And here, when it generates a plan, you'll notice that it's kind of thinking through, going through a couple of places. Don't you just love it when that happens? Again, over here, it's interesting. Let's create a customer. Customer in Business Central. You know, one part of me wants to edit this out of the video, but I think I'm going to let it in. Let's pause this for a second, see if I didn't actually turn on the topic. And I don't have the, yep, that is create a customer in Business Central. And that was really odd how that didn't pick up. That was a weird one-off. I'd have to go and check. But normally what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to elevate topics over all the other tools, etc., that are available to it. So now you see it says instructions or create a record. If I choose instructions, it's going to give a an answer on how to. And once again, if I'd said create a customer, or I'd like to create a customer, and one of the things I can do to make this umbrella a little bit broader is give my trigger a little more in the way of examples of the types of things that the user might ask to make sure that it captures all of them. And here I could say create a record, and this is now showing the adaptive card. And for context, what I was talking about here is under here, the trigger is very simple. I could say when the user asks to create a customer or how to create a customer, it says I want to create a customer. I give it a couple more examples, and sometimes that will help make sure that this captures or traps the conversation, and then it takes you down the path that you wanted to go to. So that was our best practice number 4. So let's look at our 5th best practice. And that is when you have complex, multi-step, multi-path, but deterministic scenarios. So for almost for all the reasons that you might use a flow for. And so while you do have agent flows, and agent flows have their place, there are times where topics can be used for accomplishing a lot. A good couple of things that you can do, a good example of something you can only do in a topic but not in a Power Automate flow is an adaptive card. An example of something that you can use both a topic or a flow for is a prompt builder. So those are available to both of them. So as you go through some examples, you'll see different types of situations will give you different options. In topics, you have a something called a create a generative answer. I can't remember if that's available to you in Power Automate, where that is where it constructs an answer based on whatever knowledge source or sources are available to it, including the ability to do a web search. So that's very natural. Then there are some other topic specific things too that you can do where you can route to a step in a topic or route to a different topic and then have it come back. So let me show you a couple of examples of where this can come into play. So let's go in and bring up this page. Here is another agent where I've got a create a new calendar event. And this create a new calendar event is going to trigger first an adaptive card. The adaptive card collects all the information that I have, and I'm going to capture all of this. Now, here's an interesting scenario because in this scenario, I will have the topic also invoke a flow, and I'll explain why I'm having to do that. It's specifically because the Outlook connector for calendar invites does not have a data type for date and a data type for time. It's got one data type for date time, and it uses a very specific date time format, which is not very normal for humans to think of, which is kind of the year, date, month, T, and then the time in 24 hours, etc. So what I need to do is first capture all of this by adaptive card. And depending on certain conditions that they may have chosen, certain things may need to happen. If it's another condition, then it basically goes through if the event date and the event start date and the event time is, ending time is less than the starting time. What I want to do in each of these cases is give it a little bit of an error and then route it right back to the top. So they once again have to populate the adaptive card. So you see over here what I'm doing. I've got that, and then for all other conditions, I have something else going on, or nothing going on. And then I go down to the action where I take all the outputs of the adaptive card into inputs into a Power Automate flow. And the reason I'm sending this into Power Automate is Power Automate's Power Effects is more powerful than Power Effects in Copilot Studio. Power Effects in Copilot Studio does not have a format date time. and Copilot and Power Automate, in fact, does. So there are things that sometimes you need to do with Power FX that you require you to almost go into Power Automate to do those and then come back out of Power Automate. So here's an example of a complex scenario that you need handling where you need both certain things from topics and then also an opportunity to call a flow. And then when I'm done, I can end a current topic. And depending on whether it's a global or a local variable, if it's a local variable, it'll automatically be reset. If it's a global variable that I have, I may also need to flush out those variables so I can clear all variables so they're not carried over into a next scenario or into a continuing conversation. So you have a lot of these powerful features that are available to you within topics. Another example that I've also got of a topic, if you're looking for it, is let me bring up this here, where I've got something called Find Posted Sales Invoices. And this is again from a backend, which is Dynamics 365 Business Central. And you will see that I've got a prompt builder. So basically, when a user gives a certain prompt and I want to extract just the sales invoice number, so they may say, I want information about posted sales invoice 12345, and I just want to extract that 12345. So here first, I'm going to use the prompt builder with some examples on how it can extract that information. So let's wait for the prompt builder to load. By the way, quick aside while it's loading, Prompt Builder is available as a standalone tool from the overview page under Tools, but a big difference that you need to remember is that if you use it there, it's not a multi-step thing. And notice too, while it's loading, that my outputs here from Prompt are in record data type. I'll show that again when I leave. By the way, this is the custom prompt. So I'm anticipating that the user will have an input of, tell me about invoice so and so, and I wanted to be able to extract this number or this value. So what I'm going to do, if I go back and look at the instructions, is if it contains a posted sales invoice number, extract it. The output should look like, for example, I'll give it some information. I could even have said that the posted sales invoice is an alphanumeric expression of up to 20 characters or 10 characters or whatever the case may be. And if it does not, then set the value as null. And I could do a quick test and it will test it based on that user input example I put there. So it's going to run through its model and it's going to come up with a filter here because I'm going to use this as a filter. If I just wanted the value, I could have extracted just the value. In this case, I forgot we were trying to actually extract an OData filter query. And so that's what it was trying to set up over here. So we take this and then this gets pulled out as a record. And then what I actually need is to work with this and then you can do some more filtering. I might need to parse this and do some more before I can work with it. So these are against situations where I have step, a lot of different things happening, conditions, trees, and I would be able to use that. So these are 5 best practices and scenarios where you can use topics or where you should really use topics in Copilot Studio agents. Did I forget one that you use a lot that you think I should also consider? When I usually come up with something like this, I'm sure if I was just writing, there would probably be a few more, but I wanted to keep it to a list of core scenarios where this would apply. Just as an aside, the reason for this particular video is a WhatsApp group that some of us Dynamics 365 Business Central MVPs have, and a lot of us are working with Copilot Studio. And a question just got asked. I think there were some conversations about people using too much or too little of topics. And somebody asked, is there any place that just highlights some best practices for topics? And I quickly whipped together a list. At that point, it was 7 things. And then as I finessed through it, I realized the last 2 really could be buried into these 5 as well. I hope you found this video useful. Please comment below and tell me your thoughts. And if you found this video useful, please hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. And I hope you'll come back to watch another video from OnlyCopilotFans. Thank you and have a great day.